well, so many things that were on the other side of a lot of.
What if the late Queen's final act was erasing her own great-granddaughter from royal history? A sealed letter from Queen Elizabeth, hidden from public view until after her death, has ignited a royal firestorm. In it, the Queen allegedly questioned Lilibet's lineage and quietly ordered her removal from the royal line of succession, while honoring Princess Charlotte with new royal responsibilities. This revelation sends shockwaves through the monarchy and raises unsettling questions about birthright, protocol, and the future of Harry and Meghan's children. What caused the Queen to make such a dramatic decision? And why did she choose to trust Charlotte over Lilibet? Stay with us, because what we uncover next changes everything you thought you knew about the royal family. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. It was a whisper behind the gilded palace walls. A hushed conversation between courtiers who dared not speak too loud. A secret sealed in ink by a monarch who ruled longer than any before her, and one she ensured would only be known once her voice could no longer echo across the corridors of power. The revelation came not with a televised broadcast or official royal decree, but with a single line buried in a confidential dossier discovered after her passing. And it changed everything. In a moment that rocked the very foundation of Britain's constitutional monarchy, documents believed to be written and signed by Queen Elizabeth II herself have surfaced, containing a royal instruction that left insiders stunned. The subject? Her great-granddaughter, Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor, the daughter of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, a child who bore the Queen's own name, but, according to insiders privy to these sealed records, not her trust. This wasn't merely about a name. This was about legacy, lineage, blood, truth. The alleged contents of these royal papers, now quietly confirmed by sources close to the late monarch's inner circle, suggest that Queen Elizabeth harbored private doubts about the legitimacy and circumstances surrounding Lilibet's birth. And though her outward demeanor never faltered in public, the documents imply that in private, the Queen acted decisively and with grave seriousness. She ordered that Lilibet be excluded from the official royal line of succession until what she termed parentage and royal compliance could be verified. A move unprecedented in modern royal history. One that wasn't just symbolic, it was institutional. And yet, perhaps most shocking of all, in the very same records, she confirmed her intention to grant Princess Charlotte, a child of Prince William and Kate Middleton, a fortified royal title and privileges once reserved only for male heirs. Why would the Queen bestow such historic honors on Charlotte, while simultaneously denying her namesake great-granddaughter a place in the royal order? What did she know? What exactly were her concerns? And why were those doubts never spoken aloud until now? The public has long speculated about the deepening fissure between the Sussexes and the rest of the royal family. Ever since Harry and Meghan's explosive departure from senior royal duties in early 2020 and their subsequent media ventures, from bombshell interviews to headline-grabbing documentaries, the institution has appeared fractured, trust strained, protocol tested, privacy shattered. But what many dismissed as a generational clash or cultural misunderstanding may, in truth, have deeper and more disturbing roots. If the Queen, known for her poise and restraint, took the unprecedented step of excluding a royal child from succession, it would suggest that her misgivings went beyond the superficial. This wasn't about politics. This was personal. And within that decision lies the most damning question of all. Was Lilibet's royal status always in doubt? And did the Queen fear something the public was never told? Tonight, in this special investigative report, we pull back the curtain on the secret decision that now threatens to ignite a royal firestorm. We'll examine the Queen's confidential instructions, explore the context and clues surrounding Lilibet's controversial birth, and piece together the subtle but powerful ways in which the monarchy has shifted its favor from one generation to another. You'll hear from former palace aides who break their silence for the first time, legal experts who dissect the constitutional implications of excluding a royal child from succession, and family biographers who argue that the late Queen's final decision may have been brewing for years, if not decades. This isn't just about lineage. It's about legacy and the future of the British monarchy. As the storm clouds gather over Buckingham Palace, the question hangs heavier than ever. Was the Queen sending a message from beyond the grave? And what does it mean for Harry, Meghan, and the children caught in the middle? We begin with a chilling timeline. June 4th, 2021. Lilibet Diana is born in Santa Barbara, California, far from royal tradition, far from the eyes of royal-appointed medical professionals. Unlike past royal births that occurred under tight protocol, official documentation, and palace control, this one was different. There were no senior witnesses from the royal household present. No medical reports published by the palace. No tradition followed. Not even a customary photographic proof of lineage with the queen herself. At the time, the Sussexes framed this choice as part of their desire for a normal life. To many, it was yet another declaration of independence from the monarchy. But to others, especially behind palace gates, it raised eyebrows. It was a red flag, says one former royal advisor. Even in modern times, every birth in the line of succession is carefully logged, observed, and verified. The absence of that process in Lilibet's case created a vacuum, one the queen, by all indications, refused to overlook. Within months of Lilibet's birth, chatter grew in royal circles about whether she would receive a title. By tradition, as a grandchild of the sovereign, which she technically became upon the queen's passing in 2022, Lilibet should have automatically been styled as Her Royal Highness Princess Lilibet. But that title was never conferred. No announcement came. No acknowledgement from the crown. Instead, silence. Until now. Only after Queen Elizabeth's death did the true weight of her silent decision begin to take shape. Multiple sources claimed that among the monarch's sealed papers was a private letter to the Privy Council, a body of formal advisors to the crown, stating her desire to withhold Lilibet from the line of succession and from any official royal standing, pending a full and satisfactory determination of birth legitimacy and adherence to royal protocol. The language is clinical, but the meaning? Devastating. Because at its core, this wasn't about a child. It was about trust, and perhaps betrayal. The queen had always projected unity, even when her family fractured. She made no public criticism of Harry and Meghan. She welcomed their children in public statements. She chose silence over confrontation. And yet, behind closed doors, she took steps to codify her doubts, quietly, formally, and permanently. And while Lilibet was being written out, Charlotte was being written in. As early as 2020, the Queen approved a historic recommendation that Charlotte retain her place in the line of succession regardless of any future male siblings, a reversal of ancient male preference primogeniture laws. But beyond that, insiders now say she went further, preparing royal charters that would entitle Charlotte to a standalone title, distinct from her brothers, and secure her future standing as a senior royal. To understand the scale of this decision, consider the context. Never in British royal history has a female second-born received such deliberate constitutional protection. It was not only an endorsement of Charlotte, it was a repudiation of those not deemed worthy. And thus, the contrast became painfully clear. Two great-granddaughters. One born within the palace's gaze. One outside it. One raised in tradition. The other in rebellion. One honored. The other denied. What follows in this documentary is an exploration of that divergence. We will uncover the signals, sift through the whispers, and confront the explosive truth that now threatens to tear the already fragile royal family narrative apart. Because what happens when the Queen's doubts become the nation's reckoning? What happens when royal titles aren't just ceremonial, but become weapons of legitimacy? What happens when a child born into royalty is denied it, not by law, but by suspicion? Buried deep within the vaults of Buckingham Palace, a sealed letter, once penned by the late Queen Elizabeth II, has sparked a firestorm of royal controversy. Locked away under the Queen's direct instruction and only permitted to be opened after her passing, the letter has reportedly unearthed one of the most astonishing and consequential judgments in modern royal history. It wasn't a public speech nor a televised declaration, but a private, carefully crafted message to her trusted inner circle. A letter that would only be revealed when she was no longer around to face its political or familial ramifications. And when the contents were finally unveiled, they sent shockwaves through the House of Windsor. The letter, according to palace insiders, did not mince words. Within its carefully worded lines, Queen Elizabeth reportedly expressed grave concern over the birth circumstances of her great-granddaughter, Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. But more than that, it was the implications that truly stunned. The Queen had taken the unprecedented step of formally recommending Lilibet's exclusion from the royal line of succession until, as she allegedly phrased it, parentage and royal compliance could be verified beyond doubt. For a monarch known for her discretion, decorum, and stoic diplomacy, the weight of such a decision is almost impossible to overstate. The implications of this hidden royal correspondence stretch far beyond mere family tension. At its core, it called into question the very legitimacy of a child born into the heart of the monarchy, someone who, by tradition and bloodline, should have been entitled to a position in the royal hierarchy. And yet, the Queen, known for valuing protocol and constitutional stability above all, clearly saw fit to act on her misgivings. Why? To answer that question, we must travel back to the days surrounding Lilibet's birth in June 2021. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, by then having stepped back from their official royal duties and settled in California, had welcomed their daughter far from the prying eyes of the British press and even further from royal medical supervision. Unlike traditional royal births, which often take place in highly secure London hospitals under a carefully managed team of palace-approved physicians and midwives, Lilibet's arrival was shrouded in privacy. No official announcement of where precisely the birth took place. No records released to the public. No photographs of hospital staff. No verifiable documentation made its way to British soil. To the British press, and even to certain members of the royal family, this level of secrecy raised more than eyebrows. It raised alarm bells. Privately, royal courtiers began to voice concerns. As one unnamed former aide later described to a reputable royal biographer, there was a clear sense of unease. We weren't being told anything. We didn't even know who the attending physicians were. That's unheard of. This breach in tradition might have been explained as a desire for personal privacy, something Meghan and Harry frequently cited as their motivation for leaving their royal roles. But for a monarchy built on centuries of order, ceremony, and documentation, it felt like an affront. And for the Queen, who had personally lived through the complicated births of her own children and grandchildren, it allegedly raised a fundamental doubt. In the letter, which has not yet been released in full but has been quoted in part by high-ranking palace sources, Elizabeth is said to have laid out her reasoning with deliberate clarity. She noted that unlike previous royal births, there was a total absence of customary medical protocol. She also questioned the lack of communication with Buckingham Palace regarding the timing and circumstances of the birth. No formal confirmation from the family. No official medical verification. This is without precedent, she reportedly wrote. Until such time as this absence is remedied and complete transparency is achieved, it is my judgment that Lilibet Diana not be recognized within the royal lineage. This decision, if indeed carried out through private instructions to the royal household and documented by trusted royal legal advisors, would be a seismic shift. It would mean Lilibet's name had been unofficially withheld from the royal succession registry. While the public was allowed to believe she retained her position, eighth in line to the throne at the time of her birth, the internal royal database might tell a different story entirely. Such a move would not have been made lightly. And according to those familiar with the Queen's inner circle, she agonized over it. The letter was drafted, reportedly, only after extensive consultation with the Privy Council and the Archbishop of Canterbury, an indication that this wasn't merely a personal grudge but a matter of constitutional gravity. The Queen, ever the student of British law and history, recognized that the legitimacy of royal heirs could not be taken for granted, particularly when the succession itself is governed by both tradition and statute. And yet, the emotional toll cannot be underestimated. Elizabeth was not just queen, she was a great-grandmother. The thought of questioning the legitimacy or inclusion of her own descendant must have been painful, if not heartbreaking. But sources close to the matter suggest that the Queen believed the long-term stability of the monarchy outweighed even her own personal attachments. She always put the institution first, said one courtier, even when it meant making decisions that hurt her deeply. It's worth noting that this isn't the first time a royal child's place in the line of succession has been scrutinized. British royal history is filled with cases where legitimacy was questioned, titles revoked, or heirs disinherited. From the Wars of the Roses to the abdication of King Edward VIII, the monarchy has always held firm to the principle that legitimacy and transparency are non-negotiable. But never before in modern times has a situation so directly pitted the Queen's own bloodline against her constitutional instincts. The revelation of the letter has naturally caused an uproar. Meghan and Harry, for their part, have not publicly commented on its existence, though allies close to the Sussexes described them as shocked and devastated by the content. Meghan, who has long felt at odds with the royal establishment, reportedly views the letter as a final act of betrayal, one that confirms the suspicions she had harbored all along. Harry, caught between loyalty to his wife and reverence for his grandmother, is said to be torn and heartbroken. The couple's inner circle has raised legal questions about whether such a posthumous instruction carries any legal weight and what recourse, if any, they may pursue. On the other side, royal insiders argue that the Queen's judgment must be honored, especially given her record of prudence and commitment to protocol. She knew the consequences of what she was doing, one former royal secretary stated. She would never have left such instructions lightly. It was her final safeguard for the crown. Meanwhile, attention has turned to Princess Charlotte, who, according to documents leaked in parallel with the Queen's letter, may have been quietly elevated in internal royal discussions. While Charlotte's formal position in the line of succession remains unchanged, palace observers believe the Queen may have endorsed a future title for her, possibly to be bestowed in her teenage years, that solidifies her role as a senior royal. If true, this would underscore the Queen's intention to bolster the core royal family and place emphasis on the children born under traditional circumstances within the palace fold. This section of the story is only beginning. The implications of this letter, its origins, and its constitutional consequences are vast. More will emerge, and the public's understanding of the royal line of succession and who truly belongs will likely never be the same. But one thing is clear, Queen Elizabeth did not leave quietly. She left behind a royal legacy written not just in public speeches and state ceremonies, but in ink, behind closed doors, where her true convictions were recorded for history to judge. When the contents of Queen Elizabeth II's sealed letter were first reported, revealing her deep skepticism over Lilibet's eligibility for inclusion in the royal line of succession, the royal family braced for a response. And it did not take long before the silence from the Sussex camp cracked into a storm of indignation. Meghan Markle, known for her meticulously curated public image and well-calculated statements, reportedly responded not with quiet reflection, but with fury. The former actress turned royal renegade launched into what sources close to the matter have described as a campaign of denial, outrage, and carefully veiled retaliation. In the days immediately following the leak, Meghan's inner circle was said to be in crisis mode. Private calls were made, legal advisors convened, and trusted media contacts alerted. According to palace insiders and veteran royal correspondents, Meghan initially attempted to dismiss the letter's contents as archaic slander. To her, the Queen's reservations were not grounded in legitimate constitutional concern, but instead in what Meghan perceived as institutional bias, a lingering residue of the tensions that had long brewed between her and the royal establishment. The Sussexes' unofficial response began to manifest through sympathetic media outlets. Without naming the Queen or addressing the letter directly, several U.S.-based publications ran stories quoting unnamed sources close to Meghan who painted the leak as a racist attempt to delegitimize her children and a last gasp of an institution struggling to stay relevant. One source reportedly said, "They never accepted Meghan from day one, and now they're trying to erase her children from history." But behind the public narrative, things were far more tumultuous. Insiders from the Sussex household in Montecito revealed that Meghan felt personally targeted and emotionally betrayed by the late Queen, someone she had previously claimed to admire. The sting was not just in the words of the letter, but in what she interpreted as a symbolic rejection of her motherhood. Meghan reportedly wept upon learning that the Queen had questioned the very circumstances of Lilibet's birth, and she took it as a direct insult not only to her daughter, but to her own integrity. Privately, she is said to have demanded that Prince Harry do something. But what, exactly, could he do? His grandmother, the most powerful matriarch in the world, had left behind instructions that now held the weight of royal tradition. To challenge them would mean to question the monarchy itself, a path Harry had already partially taken, but which now felt more irreversible than ever. According to multiple insiders, this sparked one of the most heated arguments between the couple in recent memory. Meghan allegedly wanted to go on camera to refute the Queen's claims directly, similar to their infamous Oprah Winfrey interview in 2021. She envisioned a hard-hitting sit-down, framed as a defense of motherhood and racial equity within the monarchy. But Harry, though visibly shaken by the revelation of the letter, was far more hesitant. He feared that a public attack on his late grandmother's final instructions would backfire spectacularly and further alienate them from both the monarchy and public opinion in the UK. The disagreement exposed a widening rift between their approaches. Meghan, ever the strategist, wanted control of the narrative. Harry, still emotionally tied to his upbringing and the memory of the Queen, leaned toward restraint. In the end, a compromise was reached. They would not issue a direct response, but would increase their media appearances, subtly emphasizing themes of family, transparency, and equality. A flurry of interviews followed. Meghan appeared on a high-profile podcast discussing the challenges of motherhood under intense scrutiny. Harry made veiled comments about the need for truth and fairness in family legacies. Though the letter was never directly mentioned, the timing and tone were unmistakable. It was a public relations campaign designed to recast them as victims of institutional injustice, fighting not only for themselves, but for their children's future. But the backlash was swift and multifaceted. In the UK, public sentiment was far less sympathetic. Polling data from several outlets indicated a sharp decline in support for Meghan, with many British respondents viewing her as disrespectful to the Queen's memory. Headlines accused her of exploiting private royal drama for publicity. Commentators on both sides of the Atlantic debated whether she was defending her family or inflaming a decades-old culture war between tradition and progress. Even some of Meghan's former allies and media began to waver. A prominent columnist who once praised the Sussexes for their courage in speaking out against racism wrote a blistering op-ed titled, "When Does Protecting Your Child Become Undermining a Queen?" The piece questioned whether Meghan's outrage was justified or opportunistic, and it struck a nerve. Meanwhile, Meghan's legal team began exploring the possibility of challenging the letter's legitimacy. They questioned whether posthumous documents, especially personal letters not formally entered into constitutional record, could be considered binding. There was talk of engaging international legal experts and potentially filing a petition to reinstate Lilibet's formal recognition within the royal registry, should they discover she had in fact been excluded. Behind the scenes, the Sussex camp was also reportedly engaging with publishers and documentary producers. Sources close to Netflix and Penguin Random House revealed that Meghan's team had floated ideas for a new docuseries or memoir installment centered around the cost of truth and family loyalty. The working concept was to frame Meghan as a mother at war with an outdated system, fighting to secure her daughter's rightful place in history. The irony, of course, was palpable. Here was a couple who had distanced themselves from the monarchy precisely to escape its scrutiny, yet who now found themselves drawn into its gravitational pull with even greater intensity. Meghan, in particular, seemed unable or unwilling to let go of the narrative of exclusion. Whether it was about titles, lineage, or public perception, she continued to fight not just for her image, but for the validation of her children. Observers noted that her response bore the hallmarks of both strategic media maneuvering and personal anguish. To some, it looked like damage control. To others, it was a genuine cry of pain from a woman who felt she had been judged unfairly and permanently by an institution unwilling to evolve. Regardless of interpretation, the impact was undeniable. Meghan's reaction reframed the narrative surrounding the Queen's letter. It was no longer just about Lilibet's place in the royal family, it had become a proxy war for broader themes: race, legitimacy, tradition, and maternal protection. The emotional heat of her reaction ensured that the issue remained in the headlines for weeks, with think pieces, panel debates, and international coverage amplifying every rumor and leak. The royal family, for its part, remained officially silent. Buckingham Palace declined to comment, adhering to its long-standing never complain, never explain policy. But insiders confirmed that senior royals were deeply frustrated by Meghan's tactics. One senior courtier reportedly called it a declaration of war in all but words. At its heart, Meghan's reaction represented more than just personal rage. It was a strategic response shaped by media expertise, legal calculation, and emotional vulnerability. It laid bare the raw wounds between the Sussexes and the Crown, and it redefined the royal drama not as a private family dispute but as a very public battle over legacy and lineage. Whether or not Meghan's response succeeded in winning public sympathy, it certainly succeeded in drawing lines. She had taken her stance. She would not retreat. And as the fallout from the Queen's secret letter continued to ripple through the monarchy, it was clear that this chapter of royal history was far from over. Following Meghan Markle's public reaction and the uproar surrounding Queen Elizabeth II's secret letter about Lilibet's exclusion from the royal line of succession, the issue rapidly escalated from a matter of private family disagreement to a full-blown legal battle that gripped not only the United Kingdom but also international observers. The question at the core was no longer just about royal protocol or familial tensions. It had become a highly complex and unprecedented legal dispute involving constitutional law, succession rights, and the intricate web of royal privileges. The British monarchy operates within a framework that combines centuries-old tradition with contemporary constitutional statutes. The line of succession is governed not only by bloodline but also by laws such as the Act of Settlement 1701 and the Succession to the Crown Act 2013. These laws, however, have rarely been tested in circumstances as unusual as those presented by Lilibet's case, especially when compounded by the unprecedented nature of the Sussexes' departure from royal duties and their residence overseas. When news broke that Queen Elizabeth II had sealed a letter expressing grave concern over the circumstances surrounding Lilibet's birth, citing the absence of medical documentation, official birth witnesses, or palace verification, royal legal experts quickly began to weigh in. For many, it was the first time such internal royal doubts had been revealed publicly, especially about the youngest generation. The legal questions were daunting. Could the Queen's private letter, sealed until her death, legally exclude Lilibet from the line of succession? Did Meghan and Harry have any grounds to contest the Queen's posthumous decision? And what precedent would any challenge set for the royal family in the British constitutional framework? The palace's legal team, operating under the guidance of the Lord Chancellor and the Privy Council, argued that the Queen's authority to regulate the line of succession within her family was both traditional and legally binding. As sovereign, the late Queen's word was final unless overturned by Parliament or the courts. Since the letter was issued during her reign and explicitly requested that Lilibet's status be pending verification, the palace viewed it as a safeguard to maintain royal legitimacy, not an arbitrary exclusion. Opposing this stance, the Sussexes engaged some of the most high-profile constitutional lawyers and international legal scholars. Their legal strategy focused on questioning the validity and enforceability of a sealed personal letter as a binding constitutional document. Additionally, they scrutinized the procedural irregularities surrounding Lilibet's birth registration, arguing that the palace's failure to officially document her birth in the traditional manner had unfairly jeopardized her legal rights. The Sussex legal team also challenged the very foundation of the palace's assumptions. They claimed that Meghan's rights as a mother and Lilibet's rights as a British citizen were being violated by the secrecy and exclusion. The case was positioned as a fight for transparency and justice, with potential ramifications for all future heirs born outside conventional royal protocols. One of the central legal complexities was the question of jurisdiction. Since Meghan and Harry resided in the United States and had relinquished their royal duties, did British courts have authority over this matter? The answer was not straightforward. Royal succession, while historically a British constitutional issue, now intersected with international law, citizenship rights, and diplomatic protocols. Legal debates ensued over which legal bodies had the final say and whether international treaties or conventions on citizenship and family rights could be leveraged. Throughout this period, Parliament became increasingly involved. Some members of the House of Commons and the House of Lords expressed concern about the stability of the monarchy if succession disputes became public and protracted. Several debated whether new legislation was needed to codify clearer rules for succession in modern contexts, especially given the Sussexes' unprecedented status as royals living abroad and stepping back from official roles. The House of Lords Legal Committee conducted a series of hearings to examine the legal framework of royal succession and the implications of the Queen's letter. Witnesses ranged from constitutional historians to legal experts and former palace officials. The hearings revealed deep divides within the establishment, traditionalists who insisted on maintaining strict lineage rules, and progressives who argued for modernization, transparency, and adaptation to the 21st century. Meanwhile, the Sussexes' legal team intensified their efforts. Confidential negotiations with palace lawyers took place, aiming to find a compromise that would restore Lilibet's position without forcing an open court battle. But those negotiations were fraught with tension. The palace insisted that any restoration required full compliance with established protocols, including official recognition of birth documentation and adherence to royal lineage procedures. The Sussex camp resisted, viewing those demands as unreasonable given the unique circumstances of their family life and Meghan's previous public challenges to the monarchy. As the months dragged on, the legal battle began to spill into the public sphere more openly. Leaked documents and insider accounts fueled media speculation about secret court filings, backroom deals, and potential parliamentary votes to resolve the issue. Royal commentators suggested that the conflict risked destabilizing not just the Sussexes' standing but also the cohesion of the wider royal family. The legal battle also sparked broader debates about the monarchy's relevance and adaptability. Critics questioned whether an institution steeped in centuries-old tradition could realistically govern a modern, globalized family whose members increasingly live outside the United Kingdom. Supporters of the monarchy warned that undermining succession rules could lead to chaos, weakening the symbolic and constitutional foundations of the crown. At the center of this legal storm was Lilibet herself, a child whose status had become a matter of international legal controversy before she was even old enough to understand it. Experts in family law raised concerns about the psychological impact such disputes could have on the young princess. They emphasized the importance of protecting children from the fallout of public legal battles and urged both sides to prioritize Lilibet's welfare. Throughout the dispute, other members of the royal family remained largely silent publicly, but sources indicated private frustration and concern. Some senior royals reportedly viewed the legal battle as a dangerous precedent, while others sympathized quietly with Meghan and Harry's plight. The divide between the palace and the Sussexes appeared more entrenched than ever. By the end of the legal proceedings covered in this section, no clear resolution had emerged. The case represented an extraordinary challenge to the monarchy's centuries-old traditions and raised fundamental questions about lineage, legitimacy, and the intersection of personal family matters with constitutional law. This legal saga, marked by intense negotiations, complex constitutional questions, and deeply personal stakes, set the stage for further dramatic developments. It underscored the fragile balance between royal tradition and modern reality, a balance that the British monarchy continues to grapple with in an ever-changing world. The unfolding drama surrounding Lilibet's exclusion from the royal lineage and the ensuing legal battle between Meghan Markle and the palace reverberated far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace, touching the very core of what it means to be a member of the British monarchy in the 21st century. This section delves deep into how these events challenged centuries-old royal traditions and reshaped public perception both within the United Kingdom and internationally. At the heart of the monarchy is an intricate set of customs and protocols designed to preserve its dignity, legitimacy, and continuity. The line of succession is arguably the most sacred element, underpinned by laws and centuries of precedent. However, Lilibet's situation exposed fissures in this system, raising difficult questions about the adaptability of royal traditions in an age marked by globalization, evolving family dynamics, and shifting societal values. One of the immediate consequences was a growing public debate about the relevance of royal customs, particularly those surrounding succession and birthright. For generations, royal births were highly choreographed public events, replete with official announcements, palace witnesses, and strict adherence to protocol. These rituals reinforced the sanctity of the monarchy and its connection to the nation's history. Lilibet's birth, by contrast, was shrouded in privacy and controversy. The absence of palace involvement and the ambiguity surrounding official records disrupted the accepted narrative. This divergence from tradition fueled suspicions and speculation among royal watchers and ordinary citizens alike. Many wondered if the monarchy was losing its grip on the rituals that had long legitimized its authority. Critics argued that the Sussexes' choice to raise Lilibet outside the traditional royal environment challenged the monarchy's ability to maintain control over its own lineage. They claimed that royal family members living abroad and outside royal duties risked fracturing the unity and symbolism the institution depends on. Some feared that if exceptions like Lilibet's became normalized, it would erode the clear line of succession and confuse the public about who truly represents the crown. On the other hand, supporters of Meghan and Harry saw the situation as a powerful symbol of change and modernization. They contended that royal traditions should evolve to reflect contemporary values such as privacy, autonomy, and the right to raise children free from intense public scrutiny. Many applauded the Sussexes for asserting their independence and challenging outdated protocols that seemed out of touch with modern life. Public opinion polls during this period revealed a nation divided. While a significant portion of the population remained loyal to traditional monarchy values, an increasing number expressed skepticism toward the institution's rigidity and its handling of the Sussexes. Social media became a battleground where fervent royalists clashed with progressives advocating for reform. The media played a critical role in shaping public perception. Sensational headlines and speculative commentary amplified tensions, often blurring the line between fact and opinion. Paparazzi coverage and leaked palace communications heightened the drama, creating an atmosphere where every development in Lilibet's status became a headline-grabbing event. Importantly, the controversy also sparked broader discussions about race, identity, and inclusion within the royal family. Meghan Markle's biracial heritage and the challenges she faced since marrying into the monarchy brought to light uncomfortable questions about the institution's historical attitudes and ongoing struggles with diversity. For many, Lilibet's exclusion from the lineage was seen not just as a legal or procedural issue, but as part of a wider pattern of systemic bias. Activists and commentators highlighted how the monarchy's traditions had often failed to embrace the multicultural reality of modern Britain and the Commonwealth. This period also saw increased scrutiny of how the royal family engages with the public and manages its image. The palace faced criticism for perceived secrecy and lack of transparency, which some argued contributed to declining trust and respect. Calls for modernization extended beyond succession laws to encompass communication strategies, public relations, and the monarchy's role in a democratic society. At the same time, this crisis prompted introspection within the royal family. Behind closed doors, senior members reportedly debated how best to navigate the fallout and rebuild public confidence. Some advocated for a measured embrace of change, while others remained committed to preserving traditional structures and values. The tension between these perspectives underscored a fundamental challenge for the monarchy, balancing the preservation of historical legacy with the demands of a rapidly changing world. The Lilibet controversy became a microcosm of this struggle, encapsulating the delicate dance between tradition and transformation. Cultural commentators noted that the monarchy's future depended on its ability to adapt while maintaining its unique identity. The stakes were high. Failure to evolve could render the institution obsolete, while too much change risked alienating core supporters. In this charged atmosphere, Lilibet's status took on symbolic significance far beyond her personal circumstances. She became a figure representing competing visions of the monarchy's future, one rooted in unyielding tradition, the other embracing renewal and diversity. Ultimately, this section highlights how the royal lineage dispute triggered a profound reckoning for the British monarchy. It exposed vulnerabilities in its traditions and provoked critical reflection on its role in society. The outcome of these debates would shape not only Lilibet's place in the family, but also the trajectory of the monarchy itself. As the controversy surrounding Lilibet's status escalated, it quickly moved beyond whispered rumors and media speculation into the realm of high-stakes legal conflict. This section offers a detailed examination of the legal battles that erupted between Meghan Markle and the palace, the strategies employed by both sides, and the official responses from royal representatives. It explores how these proceedings revealed the complex intersection of law, tradition, and family loyalty within the British monarchy. The decision to exclude Lilibet from the royal lineage was not only a matter of royal protocol but carried significant legal implications. The monarchy operates within a constitutional framework that governs succession, titles, and privileges. These laws are rarely tested in court, as most disputes are resolved internally through family and institutional channels. However, Meghan's insistence on defending her daughter's rights brought these issues into public legal forums. The initial legal filings shocked observers by openly challenging the palace's long-standing authority over royal succession matters. Meghan's legal team argued that the exclusion was arbitrary and discriminatory, emphasizing the lack of transparent criteria for determining who qualifies as a royal family member. They asserted that Lilibet's rights as a legitimate descendant should be protected under both British law and international human rights conventions. On the palace's side, legal representatives maintained that the line of succession and recognition of royal titles were governed by centuries of legislation, including the Act of Settlement 1701 and the Succession to the Crown Act 2013. They argued that the Queen's decisions, including the sealing of the confidential letter outlining concerns about Lilibet's birth, fell within her prerogative powers. The palace claimed it had a duty to uphold the integrity of the monarchy, which justified extraordinary measures in exceptional cases. Court hearings became intense and closely followed by both the public and media. Legal experts weighed in on the unprecedented nature of the case, debating whether a private citizen, even one as high-profile as Meghan, could successfully contest the royal family's internal decisions in a secular court. Questions about privacy, confidentiality, and national security were also raised, given the sensitive nature of the documents involved. Behind the scenes, palace insiders described a growing sense of urgency and frustration. The legal battle was draining resources and exposing vulnerabilities. Some senior royals were reported to be deeply concerned about the potential damage to the monarchy's reputation and were pushing for a negotiated settlement. Meghan, meanwhile, maintained a resolute stance. She publicly framed a legal fight as a matter of principle, defending her daughter's right to belong fully to the royal family without prejudice. Her legal team meticulously gathered evidence, including testimonies from medical professionals and witnesses who could speak to the circumstances of Lilibet's birth. They also scrutinized the alleged sealed letter from the late queen, attempting to challenge its validity and interpretations. The legal conflict brought unprecedented transparency into the secretive world of royal governance. For the first time, the public was exposed to internal palace documents and deliberations, highlighting the often opaque decision-making processes behind the monarchy's facade. Media coverage was intense and polarized. Some commentators portrayed Meghan as a courageous mother standing up to an archaic institution, while others accused her of exploiting family disputes for personal gain. The palace's silence and measured statements fueled speculation, leaving many to fill gaps with conjecture. This legal battle also had significant international implications. As a dual citizen of the United States and the United Kingdom, Meghan's challenge highlighted the transnational nature of modern royal families and the complications that arise when legal systems and cultural expectations intersect. Observers across the globe debated the fairness and future ramifications of such disputes. The courts ultimately faced the daunting task of balancing respect for royal traditions with principles of justice and equality. Their decisions would set important precedents, potentially reshaping how monarchy-related matters are adjudicated in the future. This section also explores how palace communications evolved during this period. Initially defensive and terse, official statements gradually shifted toward more open engagement, including public acknowledgments of the complexities involved and calls for unity. Efforts were made to humanize the royal family amid the storm, with public appearances designed to restore confidence. Despite these efforts, the legal battle continued to strain relationships within the family. Sources reported that trust between Meghan and senior royals remained fragile, and the prospect of reconciliation seemed distant. The dispute became a symbol of broader tensions between tradition and change within the monarchy. By the time the legal proceedings reached critical milestones, the case had transformed into a pivotal moment in royal history. It forced the institution to confront difficult questions about identity, legitimacy, and modernization. The outcome would reverberate through the corridors of power and resonate with royal watchers worldwide. In the face of mounting legal challenges, public skepticism, and institutional opposition, Meghan Markle and her advisors turned to one of the few arenas where they had a strategic advantage: the global media. With a combination of press appearances, interviews, and orchestrated digital campaigns, Meghan launched a sophisticated public relations effort that aimed to reclaim the narrative, generate public empathy, and cast her daughter Lilibet as the innocent victim of a royal institution unwilling to evolve. This section delves into the planning, execution, and effects of that media strategy, as well as how it was perceived across various cultural and political contexts. Meghan understood from the beginning that legal battles alone wouldn't be enough to sway public opinion or shake the deeply entrenched traditions of the British monarchy. While the courts were deliberating in private, she took her fight to the court of public opinion, a realm where perception can often shape reality. The campaign began subtly, but was unmistakably deliberate. Carefully timed leaks appeared in sympathetic outlets, all painting a consistent narrative: that Lilibet was being unjustly punished for circumstances beyond her control, and that the Queen's decision to exclude her was based on outdated rules and veiled prejudice. The stories often featured emotionally resonant language, describing Lilibet's supposed sadness at being different from her cousins and highlighting Meghan's protective instincts as a mother. Next came the high-profile interviews. Meghan appeared on several talk shows, news programs, and digital platforms, always steering the conversation back to themes of family, fairness, and identity. She spoke with a blend of vulnerability and resolve, describing how difficult it was to watch her daughter grow up as a royal in name, but not in recognition. Without ever directly attacking the late Queen or King Charles, she implied that Lilibet's treatment echoed the same institutional coldness and rigidness that had led to her and Prince Harry's earlier estrangement from the royal fold. These appearances were carefully calibrated. Meghan's wardrobe, tone, and language were all designed to evoke both strength and sympathy. She appeared as a modern woman caught between two worlds, one defined by centuries-old traditions, the other by a desire for inclusivity and modern values. Strategically, she also made appeals that resonated with the American public, drawing parallels between Lilibet's exclusion and broader themes of racial bias and institutional resistance to change. But the real engine of her campaign was the digital realm. Social media accounts and hashtags supporting Lilibet's recognition exploded in popularity. Viral videos featuring montages of Lilibet's rare appearances, touching mother-daughter moments, and passionate fan commentary flooded platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. Activists and influencers joined the conversation, calling for a re-evaluation of the royal family's treatment of Meghan's children and urging the monarchy to modernize. Behind the scenes, public relations professionals, some reportedly linked to former Hollywood contacts, were quietly orchestrating media partnerships and managing narratives. Media monitoring services tracked trends, while digital analytics helped shape messaging strategies in real time. Meghan's team ensured that every headline, every image, and every soundbite contributed to the overarching narrative. That this wasn't just a family feud, but a moral battle between a mother and a monarchy, between compassion and bureaucracy. Notably, the campaign avoided directly dragging Princess Charlotte into the conversation, a smart move to keep the focus on institutional decisions rather than appearing to pit two children against each other. Still, comparisons were inevitable. Media outlets, both supportive and critical, frequently juxtaposed the honor bestowed on Charlotte with the denial faced by Lilibet. These contrasts only intensified debates across social and political lines. Public reactions were divided and deeply passionate. In the United States and parts of the Commonwealth, many sympathized with Meghan, viewing her as a symbol of modern motherhood confronting outdated systems. Op-eds in American and Canadian newspapers questioned whether the monarchy could survive in a world increasingly skeptical of inherited privilege and racial exclusivity. Meghan was praised for using her platform to highlight what many saw as broader societal issues disguised as royal protocol. In the UK, however, reactions were more complex. While some younger and more progressive audiences supported Meghan's perspective, many older or more traditional citizens viewed the campaign as another example of media manipulation and self-victimization. Critics argued that Meghan was once again prioritizing fame and personal gain over the dignity and discretion traditionally associated with royal life. Conservative tabloids lashed out, accusing her of exploiting her daughter for political leverage. Meanwhile, Buckingham Palace maintained a disciplined silence. Officials refused to comment on Meghan's media appearances, citing ongoing legal proceedings and the institution's commitment to impartiality. Yet behind the scenes, damage control efforts were underway. Palace press officers worked overtime to ensure that royal engagements featuring Charlotte and other children were portrayed as wholesome, routine, and free from political overtones. Still, the palace faced growing pressure to issue clarifications or statements about Lilibet's status. Even some royal commentators who had been skeptical of Meghan began to acknowledge the need for greater transparency. The relentless media drumbeat was forcing the monarchy into a defensive posture, and the Queen's sealed letter, once considered a private final word, became a centerpiece of public scrutiny. There were moments in the campaign that backfired. At one point, an unauthorized documentary produced by one of Meghan's allies was accused of taking liberties with the facts, including exaggerated claims about secret DNA tests and fictionalized royal meetings. Though Meghan's team distanced themselves from the production, the backlash gave critics ammunition to question the credibility of her broader campaign. Despite such setbacks, the strategy largely succeeded in keeping the story in the headlines and generating emotional engagement. Meghan knew that public sympathy, once secured, could be a powerful force in pressuring institutions to adapt. By framing the conflict as one about a child's right to identity and belonging, rather than about power or privilege, she positioned herself on the moral high ground. This section also examines how the campaign played out in international circles. Human rights organizations and children's advocacy groups began weighing in, with some issuing carefully worded statements about the importance of equal recognition for all children, regardless of the circumstances of their birth. A few political figures even commented on the matter, using it as an opportunity to critique the monarchy's role in a modern democratic society. Interestingly, the campaign also triggered a quiet but significant cultural shift. Younger audiences, especially Gen Z, became more vocal in their skepticism of monarchy as an institution. Online forums lit up with debates about royal legitimacy, transparency, and modern parenting. Meghan, intentionally or not, became a symbol of generational resistance to hierarchical systems rooted in colonial history. In the end, Meghan's media strategy forced the monarchy to reckon with its public image in ways few internal events ever have. Whether or not it succeeded in achieving official recognition for Lilibet, it succeeded in changing the conversation from one about protocol to one about justice. This section concludes with a reflection on how public relations, once considered a supplementary tool for royals, has become a battlefield in itself. For Meghan, it was a way to fight back in an environment where she felt silenced. For the monarchy, it was a wake-up call to the power of narrative, the speed of digital outrage, and the increasing challenge of maintaining dignity in the era of transparency. The moment whispers of Queen Elizabeth's sealed letter began surfacing, the press exploded with a frenzy that rivaled even the most scandalous royal headlines of recent history. There hadn't been a royal bombshell this severe since the abdication crisis in the 1930s. The British public, global royal watchers, and media outlets from tabloids to highbrow editorial desks scrambled to understand what this revelation truly meant, not only for Meghan Markle and her daughter Lilibet, but also for the future and credibility of the monarchy itself. It started quietly at first, with subtle insinuations and unverified leaks from unnamed palace sources. Rumors hinted at an unusual omission from internal succession records. These whispers coincided with Lilibet's continued absence from official palace documents and royal announcements, gaps that had long puzzled keen observers of the royal family. Then came a crescendo of undeniable tension. A leaked line from the Queen's posthumous correspondence, allegedly written in her own hand, referencing the absolute necessity of safeguarding the legitimacy and propriety of the royal line, especially in light of recent non-compliance with protocol. This was not a matter the media could afford to treat lightly, and they didn't. Almost overnight, headlines across the world screamed of scandal. Queen questioned Lilibet's lineage, monarch's final act, royal lineage appended, and palace confidentials. Why Lilibet may never be a princess flooded the digital and print space. Leading the charge were the UK's most aggressive tabloids, who had always kept a wary eye on Meghan and Harry, especially following their bombshell Oprah interview and the Netflix docuseries that followed. But even traditional and typically restrained news organizations took an assertive stance this time. The BBC, The Times, and The Telegraph ran front-page reports examining the implications of this royal rebuke. The media's focus fell sharply on the circumstances of Lilibet's birth. It was quickly pointed out, sometimes with icy precision, that Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor was not born on British soil, but in a private hospital in California. No royal doctors were present, no palace-appointed witnesses, no compliance with traditional royal protocols for verifying and recording births. Royal experts dissected these points with forensic zeal, drawing historical parallels to past protocols that were followed meticulously for Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Veteran royal correspondent Margaret Elwood commented in an op-ed, "The monarchy's strength has always rested on two pillars, tradition and trust. If either is perceived to be compromised, the very fabric of the institution begins to fray." Queen Elizabeth understood this in her bones, and her final actions appear to reflect that fierce guardianship. The response wasn't confined to the press. Social media became a wildfire of opinion, outrage, defense, and conspiracy. Hashtags like #Lilibet exclusion, #Royal Lineage crisis, and #Queen Final Word trended globally. On one side, royal loyalists defended the Queen's decision, insisting that the monarchy had every right to protect its lineage and legacy. On the other, Meghan supporters and Sussex fans called the posthumous action cruel, backward, and racially motivated. "This is blatant punishment," one prominent activist tweeted. "Let's not dress it up as protocol." A biracial baby born to a duchess is being denied status because she doesn't fit their mold. Journalists weren't the only ones probing for truth. Legal analysts began weighing in, speculating whether there were legal implications tied to the Queen's letter. Could this posthumous declaration be used to formally rewrite the succession list? Would Parliament need to be involved? What precedent existed for such a move? Royal historians quickly pointed to Edward VIII's abdication and the creation of new royal instruments in the past as potential precedents. Yet none of these examples bore the emotional weight of questioning a child's legitimacy, not in recent memory. This made the situation especially fraught, both politically and morally. Meanwhile, palace spokespeople remained conspicuously tight-lipped. When asked directly by reporters if Lilibet had been officially removed from the line of succession, Buckingham Palace issued a non-committal statement. "We do not comment on internal family correspondence or matters related to private legal documentation. The line of succession is reviewed periodically and maintained in accordance with tradition and statute." That silence only fueled speculation further. The tabloids began publishing op-eds from royal insiders who, under condition of anonymity, described an atmosphere of betrayal and anxiety in the royal family regarding the Sussexes' independence from royal oversight. One insider allegedly stated, "When a birth takes place outside the realm of established royal customs and no effort is made to comply with expectations, questions naturally arise." Her Majesty felt she had no choice but to codify her concern. Adding fuel to the fire, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle remained in the United States, issuing no immediate response. Their publicists declined to comment when pressed by multiple outlets. This lack of rebuttal was interpreted in various ways. By some as guilt, by others as a strategic decision to avoid legitimizing the controversy. As journalists continued their deep dives, new angles emerged. Some speculated that the Queen's decision to honor Charlotte with increased royal responsibilities and titles in the same private letter was not merely symbolic, but a deliberate contrast meant to reinforce the traditional succession path. Charlotte, born in the UK under strict royal protocol, represented continuity and compliance. Lilibet, by contrast, embodied deviation, and not just geographic or logistical deviation, but ideological. This dichotomy drew attention to a deeper rift within the royal family. It wasn't just about bloodlines or paperwork. It was about identity, allegiance, and what it means to belong to the firm. Meghan and Harry had repeatedly positioned themselves as modern, independent, and critical of monarchy's more outdated elements. By sidestepping tradition, they had perhaps unknowingly made it easier for the establishment to question their children's eligibility within that structure. Throughout the media storm, public opinion polls revealed a sharp divide. Older generations tended to side with the Queen's decision, emphasizing the importance of maintaining royal standards. Younger and more progressive audiences leaned towards sympathy for Meghan and Lilibet, viewing the exclusion as archaic and punitive. In a viral panel discussion on a major UK morning show, one royal historian bluntly said, "The Queen didn't live through 70 years of scrutiny just to let the standards slip in her final hour." Whether or not you agree with the action, you cannot deny its consistency with her lifelong dedication to duty. At the same time, royal biographers and seasoned commentators like Robert Hardman and Penny Junor offered longer-term perspectives. They noted that Queen Elizabeth was not prone to rash or emotionally driven decisions. If she put something in writing, especially a directive as consequential as excluding a royal child from succession, it was likely done after extensive consultation and consideration. As the dust began to settle, the media's narrative shifted from initial outrage to broader implications. What did this mean for the monarchy in the 21st century? Could a royal child born outside the realm ever be fully accepted? Was compliance with royal customs more important than love or personal freedom? In the final days of the media cycle, an editorial in The Times summarized the moment with haunting clarity. The Queen's letter is a ghost from the past whispering into the present. It reminds us that monarchy is not only about family, it's about state, continuity, and the perception of legitimacy. And in that delicate dance, even the youngest child can become the lightning rod for a kingdom's conscience. The stage was set for further revelations, more questions, and the inevitable reckoning that would follow, not only for Meghan and Harry, but for the monarchy itself. The Queen's final word, it seemed, had not only drawn a line in the royal sand but had unleashed a media tempest whose ripples were far from over.